I want to have a little talk today about the first time that I ended up in a boys' home, a child institution. It was called Darrick. It was in Windsor, and it was the worst place I had ever encountered in my life. I hated it. They got you marching everywhere, working on crow shooting, they used to call it, on Saturdays, which was moving all these tyres, digging ditches, marching everywhere like I was in the army, living in these dormitories with like 50 or 40 other kids, fights, abuse, you name it. It was all happening at this place called Darrick. And I was so lonely. And all I wanted was just to go home. And I couldn't get out of the place. I was sentenced there for stealing push bikes. And I got what they called back in the day a general committal. That was 3 years maximum, and you did 4.5 months of that. So I did 4.5 months, and I got out of there. But I really despised it. I hated the officers in there. They were mean. They were like soldiers, getting to march us in right formation. If you got out of step, you'd be smacked on top of the head. The kids also marching. I was very young. I was only 12. Some were older boys, and if you got out of step while you were marching from, say, the dorm, I was in a place called Wallara. If you got out of step, the bigger kids behind you would kick you in the feet and slap you on top of the head and go, get in the step, you little mongrel. And I'd be like, fucking what? Fuck, I'd be going off at these kids and I'd turn around and I'd want to fight them, and the whole company would stop and the officers would go off their heads, and yeah, it wasn't a nice place. I didn't like it, and I was so glad when I got out of there. I used to go on weekend leave um, after a couple of months, and I'd I'd get out and I'd hang around with my mates around Balmain because that's where I'm from, and they would be saying, "Oh, what's the boys' home like, Dean? Like what's it like up there?" And we go, "Nah, it's all right. It's just a bit of a holiday for me up there." And they go, "Oh, we heard it was a bad place too." I go, "No, it'd be all right. You'd go all right up there. If you were there with me, we'd have fun." And yeah, I just used to put on this face in front of the kids out on weekend leave. But yeah, it wasn't a good place, and I used to get into fights all the time with other kids. There was this one kid there they called Ramsey, and he was a red-headed kid, and he was a mongrel. I thought I was a bad kid until I met Ramsey. He used to poo in the pool there. Um, he was so rebellious, always in trouble. They used to have these floorboards made out of timber, and when you played up and got into trouble, they would give you a consequence called dry scrubbing, and you'd have to get on the ground and dry scrub. And Ramsey was always dry scrubbing. I was always dry scrubbing with him because I wasn't far away from him as far as the trouble was concerned. And one day at school, Ramsey and I got into a fight, and I kicked him in the head, and I got locked up in the disco, they used to call it. It was a detention unit near the ablution blocks. Oh, it was terrible. It was so cold in there, and like Windsor back in the day, like that was out past like Blacktown, and the only way you could get to this boys' home, Darrick, was on a train. It wasn't an electric train; it was a coal train because the line stopped at Blacktown, and yeah, it was Windsor was in the sticks, and it was really really cold out there, and in this detention unit, it was freezing. Oh man, I was so cold, and I can remember I was singing songs to myself as a little kid in this detention unit. Yeah, it wasn't a good experience for me. Yeah, but the food was okay. I didn't mind the food, and when you got discharged from there, oh, this makes me laugh. When they were going to send you home, you would have a morning muster. There was four companies there, if my memory serves me right: Bunya, Wallara, Cooma, and Daru. If anyone's been to Darrick, help me with that because maybe I'm out of whack. And each morning, every company that was there would would go on to the like an assembly, and you'd stand there, and they would read out like job descriptions for people, what they had to do during the day. The little kids, different little cliques of kids would go work in different places, the kitchen, the the laundry. Some would do crow shooting. The boiler room, they had a big boiler room there, and that's where you also got called up for discharge. And if they called your name out after giving out the work descriptions for the kids, everybody there from each company would be going discharge, 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 and friggin', you'd be walking up and discharge, 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 and yeah, I was so glad to get out of that place. It was yeah, it was hell. It wasn't a nice place at all. And as I said, the older kids there, they used to do some terrible things to the younger kids, like as far as violence is concerned, and the officers there used to use the older kids to control the younger kids, keep us in line. They'd say to the older kids, "Yeah, pull Ken up, like get him to do this and get it," and the kids are coming, "Hey, get over here, Ken, and do that, and friggin'." You go, "Oh, what's going on here?" You go, "Fucking come on, I'm just got to do it," or we're all going to get into trouble, or clean the ablution blocks, or like dry scrub, or friggin' you got to go and crow shoot, or you got to go and work here, or yeah. So that they used to tell the older kids to like control the younger kids. Yeah, so that was my take the first time in the boys' home called Darrick. And yeah, it set me up for a few others after that. Have a good day.